Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is Gianni DePocci, your host, and today is the 13th of December, 2023. So it's time to review what's been going on in financial markets and in the geocosmic picture. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. We can start off by looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is pretty flat on the day here. We do have Fed Chair Powell slated to speak later today. Now, mind you, Fed Chair Powell will be giving this press conference as Mercury is set to go retrograde later this evening. Now, I know last week I misspoke and said Mercury, and I said that Neptune was going retrograde when really Neptune went direct. So I'm not going to say that Mercury is going direct this year, but a little bit of humor definitely helps, especially when we're talking about the trickster, right? But in any event, the narrative from central bankers in the last few weeks has been higher for longer, but markets are actually discounting rate cuts next year. So I wouldn't be surprised for Fed Chair Powell to come out as hawkish today, but I think we need to keep perspective of the bigger picture. Inflation expectations continue to come down, and that is very much a tailwind for the Fed to pivot and be more dovish going into next year. So, stocks are a little overbought in the near term. We are in a reversal zone, but, pretty much all indices have rallied to new highs for the year, with the exception of the S&P futures market. But you can see here, we're looking at the NASDAQ did make a new high for the year in the cash market. We started off this week with Venus being in opposition to Jupiter. That was on the 9th. It was actually on Saturday. And again, today, Mercury is going retrograde. Now, later this week, on Saturday, the 16th, we'll have Sun square Neptune. So again, Neptune, Jupiter, we're in between two aspects related to those planets, and they govern inflation expectations. So between those and Mercury going retrograde, I'm not going to be buying what Powell says today if he says the Fed's going to keep rates higher for longer. I think this is the new transitory inflation, and we know how wrong the central bank got that one. Now, next week, we do have on the winter solstice on the 21st, Venus will be opposite Uranus. So in looking at the NASDAQ here, we are making new highs. Now, could this breakout accelerate? It's entirely possible with that signature. But I think being in this Mercury retrograde period, we do need to be a little cautious, because the probability, the likelihood of false moves, false breakouts, choppy markets are much more elevated now. And Mercury will be retrograde until the 1st of January 2024. So let's go ahead and jump over to crude oil. Take a look at USO, trying to find a little bit of a bid here. Again, we're in between two planetary aspects involving Jupiter and Neptune, which rule this market. And this is a big reason why I think the Fed will be able to cut. Earlier this week, we had some inflation reports that came in at estimates. So we're not really getting those hotter than expected CPI prints that we were earlier this year. So with crude oil down so much from its high, that also is a disinflationary signal. But it's also a warning sign that the economy could be slowing going into next year. Now, obviously, we're coming off a really hot third quarter GDP number, but that doesn't mean that the economy is not slowing down now. The good news is we're in holiday shopping season. Americans are probably going to be spending more due to having some savings at the gas pump. But that doesn't mean that everything's all fine and dandy going into 2024. So with energy prices down this much, it is a warning shot from commodity markets. I think that global demand for energy is decreasing, and that usually precedes a recession of some form. So let's take a look at gold, which has come down pretty strong from its all-time high last week. We're looking at GLD, the spot gold ETF. And, looking at the price pattern over the last couple of days, the bearish side of me would say we are consolidating the losses, which is typically bearish price action. But we are in the time band for a trading cycle low, so need to be aware of that. And as a rule, new all-time highs are something you see in bull trends. Now, with the upcoming Neptune aspect, we could see precious metals recover in the weeks ahead. But the fact that silver didn't even manage to make a new high for the year during the latest rally is a cautionary signal as well. I want to take a look at the euro against the dollar. Next week, like I said, we have Venus opposite Uranus, so that's going to be important with respect to currency markets. Venus rules currencies. I still think that this high that formed on the 29th of November was significant with respect to the trend. We have our updates in the weekly and daily reports, and I think the overall positioning continues to favor the dollar going into next year, especially considering the conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, which rules currencies. Now, if the dollar does continue to pull back, that may be bullish for stocks at the beginning. But at some point, I think stocks will need to figure out how to rally with the dollar in order to sustain the upward trajectory. Let's take a look at interest rates. We'll take a look at the yield on the 10-year Treasury note. So been coming down. In other words, bond prices have been rising. So we'll see if they can make it through the FOMC rate decision today and Fed Chair Powell. Again, don't believe everything you hear today when it comes to monetary policy and the Fed. The good news is that by the time the Fed meets again at the next meeting, we'll be out of Mercury retrograde. But again, actions speak louder than words. And right now the market is pricing in rate cuts next year, probably in May. And that's not long after the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction either, which is very nice from a geocosmic standpoint. So some long-term cycles may have bottomed in the bond market, meaning that interest rates should maintain a downward trajectory in the next few months at least. But we are approaching the moment of truth that has not been confirmed yet. So something to keep in mind over the next couple of weeks as well. And last, but certainly not least, we have Bitcoin. So it had a pretty strong sell-off on Monday, trying to stabilize the decline here. We have satisfied our initial upside objectives. We are getting very late in the 15-month cycle, which is the intermediate term cycle in this market. So some caution is advised. We have been saying and maintain that the easy money has been made in Bitcoin. Ethereum might be a different story because I think it's earlier in its 15-month cycle, but it's going to be very important to watch Venus opposite Uranus next week, because we could get another breakout, but it might be the last breakout, especially during Mercury retrograde. It might be that false move that often accompanies the culmination of a cyclical high in a bull market. So that's all that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for stopping by at the weekly market update for MMA cycles in our YouTube channel. I would encourage you to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and wanted to also let you know that our flagship report, the monthly cycles report, was just published. Well, the monthly cycles report was published on Monday, and then the European and the Asian markets analysis was published on Tuesday. So you can check that out at www.mmacycles.com. I would also encourage you to check out the recording of an options webinar that was conducted by Ray Merriman and Derek Panaya, who is a student of the Merriman Market Timing Academy. You can find that at www.mmacycles.com. So I would encourage you to take a look at that as well. So that's all for now. We will see you same time, same place next week.